Mental Health Monday with Mick Coyle.
Radio City Talk.
Hello and welcome to episode 100 of Mental Health Monday. My name is Mick Coyle. I do hope you're well. Thank you for joining us today. We have got a special that marks the start of Children's Mental Health Week. We're live from the steps of the iconic St George's Hall in Liverpool city centre. In front of me, we have laid out more than 200 pairs of young people's shoes, of children's shoes. Each one of these shoes represents a child or young person who is lost to suicide every single year. The latest stats that we've been shown at Radio City Talk suggest that the number of young people lost to suicide between the age of 10 and 19 is more than 226 in fact, many of them between the ages of 10 and 14. Over the course of the next 4 hours, we're going to be looking at some of those stories. We'll be looking at the work that is done to try and prevent suicide, but also we're going to talk generally about mental health and the things that we can do to improve our own mental health, our children's mental health, and we'll also ask what we can do as society, politically, to change things. If it costs money, where do we find the money from? If it's about dealing with different organisations, how do we get those organisations' voices heard? We'll have that full story here on Radio City Talk. It's episode 100 of Mental Health Monday. Now, we're up and about on social media today. You can hashtag us in. We're going with the hashtag today, Lost Childhoods. We're using that hashtag because it represents both the issue of suicide, but also the fact that many young people's lives are ruined because of the way that life has treated them, the situation they have found themselves in, that their mental health is not in a place that allows them to thrive, to go on and achieve all the things they want to do in life. So if you want to involve yourself on social media, hashtag Lost Childhoods. If you get your tweets into @Radio City Talk, we'll do our best to answer as many questions as we can. As ever, I am joined by, all the way from Chasing the Stigma, Jake Mills. Jake, thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Jake and I did the 24-hour show just over a year ago, and at the time, Jake, people kept saying, what are you going to do next? What's the next thing? We've tried to set our stall out by saying, you know what, we're trying to make a difference here. We're trying to show that mental health needs to be talked about, but let's find a way of getting people to talk. What are your thoughts on the shoes as you see them here?
Yeah, I think you're spot on in that, you know, that first year when we done the 24 hours, trying to prove a point to say, look how easy it is to talk, we're doing 24 hours, and I think that was important in itself, but now we're kind of taking it out there, we're trying to get that message across. I think it's really easy to try and talk to people and tell people numbers. What's not as easy is getting them to really understand what those numbers mean, what it looks like, and I think, well, I mean, I knew that this was planned, but walking up and seeing the shoes here like this, it is moving. It's striking, especially as a dad. I think it's incredibly moving. I think it's really powerful in what you want to do, which is showing people the effects of suicide. And these are children that we're talking about. But the reality is, Mick, we've got 226 shoes here. There could be thousands more based on the lives who've been affected by the number of children who are taking their own lives as well. And it goes beyond this, but I think this will certainly get people talking and hopefully get people to take it seriously and to understand.
I think as well, one of the themes which will emerge is, you know, you mentioned there being a dad, being a parent myself. As a parent, you know, your kids' shoes are so important to you, aren't you? You've got to make sure you can't go out wearing them. We're going to have to repair his shoes. You're going to have to fix his shoes, get a new pair of shoes. They're such a priority. And this isn't about saying that parents haven't sort of made mental health of their children a priority, because situations are different right across the board. But I almost get the sense we're not skilled. We're not taught how to look out for maybe some of the signs, and hopefully over the course of the next 4 hours we'll get a sense of what those signs are. What are those things that we need to be looking out for? What are those steps we need to take as a parent to really make a difference and allow our children to thrive?
And that's exactly it. You talk about stigma, and that's what it is. Stigma comes from that ignorance of not teaching people. We're not prepared on how to have a conversation, and I think there's a big myth, there's a huge myth that people don't want to talk about mental health. They do. We've seen that through your show, 100 episodes you've done of this show, and that's always been full of people wanting to share their stories, wanting to talk about it. So the myth that people don't want to talk, if people don't really have the knowledge or the tools to be able to do that, what they believe safely and confidently, and that's what it's about, is getting the message out there and making that easier for people to be able to have those conversations and find the help that's available, because there is help available.
Jake set up the Hub of Hope. For people who don't know, it's basically a database of mental health services, and what you can do, if you can go to that website, and it uses the location section of your phone to basically find where you are, and it'll point you in the direction of mental health services close to you. You can then filter down the things which are appropriate to you and hopefully make contact with them. They're signed up so that you can make contact with them. I think that's one of the key points. And Jake, it's great to see so many organisations are here today. The team at PAPYRUS who've come with a gang of people. I was going to say mob-handed. I was a bit offensive. They've come down with a gang of people. They've got like a little roadshow set up as well. So people do want to have those conversations. They can come down to Liverpool City Centre. We're on the steps of St George's Hall, so it's a public space, and you can grab one of the team and have those conversations today. I would
urge everybody to come and have a look at this. To as you said, the help that's available is here as well. But just come and have a look, because it's easy when you're looking at numbers and figures on a piece of paper. Come and have a look at the reality, because this is what we're dealing with in this country, and it's just not good enough. And we all have to come together to make a difference.
People want to come down, they can do. It's a public spot, St George's. So many people are coming down and they're kind of saying, look, am I being ignorant? Should I know what this is about? Hopefully we'll get the message out by doing the show live on Radio City Talk. We'll hear until 3 o'clock this afternoon, and we'll keep it open an hour or so after that as well, basically until it goes dark.
And it's not even that cold.
You know what? It's suspiciously not cold.
No.
So
it might be the layers.
I was going to go to 2 football matches this weekend, both of which got called off because of the bad weather.
Yeah.
So my long johns, at least they're clean.
I'm getting a sweat out of here.
If people want to get involved on social media, the hashtag Lost Childhoods at Radio City Talk as well is the Twitter handle as well. That's at Radio City Talk. If you want to get involved, we'd love to hear from you. We'll do our best to ask questions. We'll put questions to the team. We'll also have conversations with various different people who will tell their story. Now, in many cases today, that might be difficult to listen to. They may be difficult stories to hear, but they're going to be so important. And I really urge you to stick with us here on Radio City Talk, because these are conversations which hopefully will make a big difference to people's lives. It might even save lives as well. We're live on Radio City Talk. My name is Mick Coyle. It's episode 100 of Mental Health Monday. First up, guest-wise, Carmel Giansante joins us. Carmel, thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us on the programme.
Oh, thank you for inviting us down. Yeah, it's okay.
I'm absolutely delighted that you're here, because when we spoke a number of months ago, you shared your story and the story of your son, and it got such a great reaction. It must be very difficult to talk about your son, but at the same time now, you're so keen to talk about him, and the work that you do now is very much about your son. Tell us about him.
Oscar was just a lovely lad. He was never in trouble. Well, you know, besides the odd little thing, was mischievous like most boys are. Just generally a nice young lad that you never thought anything would go wrong with. He was really intelligent, and so you kind of could put your trust in him, thinking, oh, Oscar's fine. You can put your trust in him. Everything's going to go fine with him. Yeah, so it came as such a shock when he did take his own life, because like we never seen it coming. There was no signs, there was no self-harming or anything that you could think of where you would be worried about him. You know, it's difficult. How do you know when your child's suffering inside when you can't see it?
I guess that's one of the things that will come through today, that there's a very normal thing. This is a very normal, your situation, family life. There's a normality to it. People think that's not the sort of thing that happens to people like us. But as we'll hear through your story, similar stories to yours as well, it can happen to anyone.
Yeah, absolutely anyone. Yeah. In life, you do have ups and downs, and you're never going to be happy like every day of the year. And I think some people forget that. So if they're a bit down, they think they should be happy. But you can't be, can you? It's impossible. So you have to monitor when you are feeling sad, but how do you know whether it's just a sadness or it's a depression? And there is ways of monitoring that yourself. You can look after yourself inside, I think. I always make the bed every morning, and I give myself a number 0 to 10 on how I feel. And in the beginning, in the early days when we lost Oscar, I was like 0 to 1. And then by the end of the day, when I was getting in bed, I might have been a 2 or a 3. And then months went by and I kept doing the same thing, monitoring how I want, and I could see my improvement of me getting better, healing inside. I'll never be a 10 again, ever, but you know, I can get to like a 6 and 7, which is quite average. If you can get into that middle range, you know you're on a good level. But as children, I don't think they understand that. If they feel down, they think, oh, this is the end of the world, you know.
In terms of talking about him now, do you find it easy? Is it difficult? Is it bittersweet?
Yeah, it is bittersweet. You know, you just want them back. There's nothing that can sort of change how you're ever going to... Oh God, how do you live your life without them? You know, they're too young to die. If you live your life knowing everything you do is they're not going to see that part of it. They're not going to see if his sister gets married, if she has children. It's going to be hard for her as well. Every part of enjoyment through life is always the sadness because he's not there to enjoy it with us.
Do you ever take time out to sort of indulge in those ideas? Do you think, you know, I'm going to spend a bit of time thinking about what he might have done, or is that something you try and stop yourself doing?
No, I do. I think, what would he look like now? Because obviously he was only 16 when he died. He was still growing. I think, how tall would he have been? What would he look like? How many friends would he have now? What would he be doing? Would he be in university? All those questions that, you know, we're never going to know. Well, never going to happen.
When we wanted to do the show and we knew it was Children's Mental Health Week, I was certain that you were absolutely the right person to speak to. And it's quite a strange story with this one. When I said, look, I've got this idea about shoes.
Yeah.
And your face sort of changed straight, and I thought, oh no, I hope I've not come up with a terrible idea. And you said, no, that's perfect.
Yeah, because I was actually driving over to meet you. And as I'm driving over, all of a sudden I got this thought in my head of shoes, because you never know what it's like to walk in someone else's shoes. And I always have a vision of Oscar putting his shoes on, going to school, and I used to use a big long shoehorn to put them on so he didn't crease the back of his trousers. And so putting his shoes on is like a really strong memory for me of him, shoes on and out the door to school. And I never knew what was going on inside of him, so you don't know what's like walking in someone else's shoes. And the fact that you kind of were saying that, I was like nearly jumping off the chair going, oh my God. It's like, yeah. So
well,
it was
well, when he got your blessing, I thought, well, okay, we'll go ahead and here it is today. Can I ask you about, obviously you're here speaking as a mum.
Yeah.
Presumably your son's death affected many, many different people. When we talk about the number of shoes that we see on the steps of St. George's Hall today, we're not just talking about one person, are we? We're talking about their stories and the number of people affected by that. Could be friends,
whole
wider
school.
family, the whole school
The
as
whole
well.
school,
Is that something you got a real sense of?
Yeah, the whole school was just like, they just couldn't function, you know, obviously for days. None of us as friends went to university. They were all really bright lads, and I kind of think it did affect them in that way of studying, because their minds were elsewhere. So lessons were not the same, and you know that impact on their future as well. Hopefully they can pick it up as they get into the younger, you know, still while they're young. But at the time when everyone was expecting them to go to university, none of them did.
And of course, you could completely understand that, couldn't you?
Yeah.
And it's not about, you know, saying this is something which should be absolutely on the national curriculum, you know, that you do an exam in, but that sort of sense of dealing with what people are dealing with, if you like, walking in somebody else's shoes. Is that something you get a real sense that actually we can teach, that you can put that into young people? Yeah,
you can. I think people do it naturally with their close friends. They do think of them because they sometimes they're scared to upset a friend, because they almost, if you've got a thought and you've got to tell something to your friend and you're thinking, oh God, I don't want to tell her that because I'm really going to upset her, that's a caring emotion. So people have that inside them naturally anyway. And I just feel to give more people awareness, give the children more awareness, and take that a little bit deeper onto the mental health side of if someone is really struggling with anxieties, other issues, you know, that they're not really touched on in school, are they? But they need to be, because it's real. It's happening to all the children, and I think because they're exposed to a lot more of life now, they learn a lot quicker. There's social media to the finger, you know, on the buttons is the fingers. It's there, where we were kind of sheltered as children. So the world has changed now. We need to change with that and support the children now.
I'm aware that there's never been sort of more opportunities for people to reach out through social media. The internet can be a thing for both bad as well as good.
Yeah.
And hopefully through finding the links today through the website, radiocitytalk.co.uk, people want to head there. People can find that help as well. Do you get the sense when we talk about children's mental health that there's almost a bit of like almost willful ignorance that people think, well, I don't know about that, and fingers crossed, mine seem all right, so I'll be fine. I won't need to find out.
Yeah, the first thing that what I don't like is when people say, oh, they're just teenagers. And that has gone along for centuries, where people say, oh, teenagers, when you get past that teenage stage is usually that a child screaming out for, I want a bit more attention or a bit more support of something, or the communication's breaking down, and it can upset like a whole family. Lucky for us that Oscar didn't go through any of those stages, but I kind of wish he did, because that's normal for to shout out. And if he had done, I could have then given him the help. But we need to sort of be more. It's the awareness of each other, isn't it? In our homes, in the schools, just friends, everywhere. Everyone that I speak to, we need to just open up a bit more and have the conversations. Yeah.
I think the phrase "everyone has mental health" sort of springs to mind at this particular point as well. What's it like for you now that you are almost like an expert in this? This
I'm not an expert.
If people want to sort of find out about this stuff, they'll think, oh, we need to go and speak to someone who's gone through it. That almost you need to go through the most tough possible thing to then come through the other side. You almost get a sense if we can just equip people further down the road, we wouldn't need to go to sort of these extremes, if you like.
Yeah, it's difficult, that, isn't it? Because that's kind of life, isn't it? With life, you never have the understanding unless you've gone through it yourself. And I think that's why I do what I do now, because I don't want anyone else to go through what we've gone through. It's unnecessary. Children shouldn't be taking their own lives, and families shouldn't be suffering. So I did feel quite angry at one point, and this was part of the early grief, was because I was like, where's all those other parents? Why are they not standing up? Because if they stood up next to us, we'd have a bigger group to shout louder, and people would listen more. And then maybe, because the more people that get on board and try and prevent it, the bigger chance we've got of preventing it. And I was quite angry. Then I kind of got to the point where I was thinking, no, actually, some people can't deal with it, and they're sat in the corner crying because it's so difficult, and everyone grieves differently. So you go through the emotions that you go through are horrible. They're really, it's horrible.
I can only, parents listeners will only be able to begin to imagine the sort of thoughts that you've had since the death of your son. You wanted to do something positive, though. You set up a foundation. With his name? Yeah, with Oscar Phillips Foundation. Right across the top. Was it important to get his name in it? Yeah, it was, because it kind of like, you think of other charities where they put a name to something, but I kind of think, no, we're doing it for him. So we'll just put his name there because, I don't know, it was just the right thing to do at the time. We just felt like it was his charity, and it's something you do. Not the last thing, sorry, but one of the conversations I had with Oscar was, what do you want to do in your life, as you do with your children, for job-wise? And he said, I want to help people. And that was his thing, anything, as long as it's supporting and helping people. And, that was like a clue, and I never picked up on it. And I think, why? How did I miss that? But I wasn't an expert, I'd never been through anything. I didn't know about mental health, really. Yeah. The Oscar Phillips Foundation website is one of the links you can find on the radiocitytalk.co.uk homepage as well. Just tell us about the work you do. So you go into schools, don't you? Yeah, we go into schools and we take an inspirational speaker with us, and they talk about the 3 C's, which is confidence, communication and commitment, continuation of studying and supporting each other. And it's a really nice talk. We don't talk about suicide at all, and we go into the younger ages as well as senior schools. So usually starting about with 8-year-olds, 7 and 8-year-olds, up to 6th form, so all the way through. But the kids react really well to it. It's an enjoyable talk that we do. Yeah. So, and it's building their confidence up.
and getting them to realise that everyone can achieve and everyone can have a full life, and everyone's different, and it doesn't matter if one of your friends is really intelligent and you're not as intelligent. There's a place in life for you, and it's kind of like finding your way in life, isn't it? That there is something there for you, and you should hold on to it, because life's worth living. And we try to give that message out to them of I'm lost now.
No, that's fine. That's absolutely fine.
Yeah,
I think you absolutely summarised the work that you do absolutely wonderfully. Yeah. Oscar Phillips Foundation, like I say, is one of those links on there. Let's bring Jake Mills back into the conversation from Chasing the Stigma. Jake, Carmel, she should have a damehood.
So I think she will. I think she will eventually, one day. You know what, Mick? We've discussed this before, and I think Carmel touched on it there. It shouldn't be up to people like Carmel and all the people who you've had on your show, who you shouldn't have to be going through something for us to see the void and the gap, and then to then do something about it. Why is it up to us? Why do we have to go through that? It's not fair, it's not on. And that's why, all the kind of the gestures and the words that are coming from the powers that be aren't enough, because it's people like Carmel who are actually going out and making a difference and not letting anything else get in the way. That's what's going to be the lifesaver, is people like Carmel. So absolutely, fair play to you, and fair play to you for speaking so openly and honestly as you did as well.
In terms of what we do, I mean, there's so much campaigning now about speak to your mates, look out for your mates, look out for your work colleagues, and these are adults, and we're trying to convince adults to have these conversations. Where do you think that sort of power should lie when we talk about children's mental health? Should it be about empowering the kids to talk among themselves, or is it about empowering the adults to be able to spot signs that they can then act on?
I think I know exactly what you're saying by the question, but I think that's the problem, is that we're looking for one route, and it's not. It's a whole. It's right across. But it's also about the services, and it's about having the services backed up and funded properly, so that when we are talking to each other, when we're talking to kids, when we're spotting signs, when we're talking to each other, we can then go and get the help and support. Because without that bit, then we're actually arguably in a worse position.
We heard Carmel's story from the Oscar Phillips Foundation. I'm very pleased to say Sarah Fitchett joins us, who is now working with PAPYRUS. Sarah, thank you for your time.
No problem, Mick. Thanks for inviting us.
They weren't doing that 10 minutes ago, and hopefully that loud banging won't be too disruptive to our story. Sarah, thank you for coming on the programme today. Thank you for joining us. When Carmel was sharing her story, I could see you nodding along in appreciation, and in the short time you've had to spend some time with Carmel, your stories have crossovers, and some of the emotions that you felt in recent years very much echo with what Carmel was sharing. Can you tell your story?
Yeah, so our life was normal family life until the 19th of August 2013, when Ben died by suicide at the age of 14. Ben's a twin to Sam, and had just had a wonderful holiday away in Switzerland with Scouts. He was a really devoted Scout and was a young leader with Scouts. So he spent 10 days away and had a wonderful time, and returned home on that Sunday night. And on Monday morning he left the house as normal to do a paper round and never returned. So our sort of story began there, with absolutely no signs of being unwell, and no mental health problems, no sadness, no depression, and no physical health problems either. So if we were looking for signs as a family, there certainly wasn't any there. He had an absolutely amazing friendship circle, friend for every day of his life, and always smiling, always happy, very successful, and achieved really well in the GCSEs that we picked up for him that he'd taken early, the end of that August. So for us, an inquest didn't give us any reasons why Ben felt that his life needed to end on that day. So our life was plunged into turmoil, a life that will never be the same, and a book that was closed as a story forever for Ben, really. So yeah, it's sort of, when you meet another bereaved parent, or a parent bereaved by suicide, certainly there's definitely some connection of the emotion that you feel, because it's such a stigmatised grief. I think unless you've been there, you don't tend to understand. And again, it's not something that you want somebody to understand, because then they would have had to have been bereaved by suicide.
You mentioned the word normal. Normal. Things were normal. That, there was nothing. And people will think, there must be something. It must be a certain type of teenager. It must be a certain type of young person there, but I presume you've almost done your own sort of poring over the facts of the situation and looked for clues, looked to try and find something, and I guess that's part of the process that you go through.
I think that is, you do your own investigation, I suppose you'd call it. Alongside the police, you're always looking for signs that you've missed. Was there something? Is there anything there? I mean, Ben left us no note to give us any reason, and an inquest gave us no answers at the end of 6 months either. So yeah, I would say, you know, when everybody looks at us normal family, what is normal? But you know, we were a set of parents and, you know, set of twins, and we had life that was normal. You know, they went out, they had plenty of friends, they were very chatty, they were great fun. Certainly were planning futures. And university wanted to be a cameraman and work with somebody like David Attenborough, so had high aspirations for his own future. So we certainly didn't have any suspicions that there was anything wrong. And I suppose when I started working with PAPYRUS and you start looking at some of the campaigns that they're running, the hashtag Spot the Signs and stuff, certainly looking back on it, I have no guilt, even though I do feel guilty. I have no guilt to feel that we missed anything, because that is something as a parent that you're constantly looking for. He did spend his time in his bedroom, he did spend a lot of time online, but that was what we classed normal teenage life. So yeah.
I mean, in terms of that and the way that family life was running, is it a case in that situation when you think about plans for your children, but also it becomes part of your wider family plan, when suicide becomes a factor in all of that, is it a case of simply you just rip up the rule book, that you're starting again from a different point? Because we're not trained in how to deal with that situation. You mentioned the stigma that comes with it as well. Is that something that you experienced?
I think it is definitely something we did experience, and I have to say some of the things that were offered as a support network. I have friends that run Rubens Retreat in Glossop, and I know that personally I felt extremely guilty from some of the comments that I'd received from people that are classed as friends about going to a bereavement support group, because my child was deemed to have given his life away, and I was joining a bereavement support group where people had fought for their children's life, cancer support groups. Now, that is not what they felt about me being there, but because somebody had given that idea to me that Ben chose to take his life and gave his life away, I felt that I didn't belong in a grief group and bereavement group like that. So I really did decline so many invites from a wonderful person called Nicola Graham, who runs a bereavement support group, and she would never have excluded me from that because she helps all bereaved parents, which I was. But again, we have had to choose different pathways with friends just because of some of the comments that they've made to us. We know that the effect that it's had on so many people's lives, it's a drop in the ocean and a ripple effect. So all the friends in his school year, we know that will have affected them. We know they may not have got the grades that they expected, and they might not have chosen the pathway that they meant to do. But for some of them, the outcome's different. They may have now chosen to go on into a job that, is supporting mental health because of what happened to one of their friends. I think, the pathways changed slightly for some, but for some it might have changed for the better.
I always get a sense there's two things. There's impact and how you respond, and young people will react in many different ways, but also when we talk about stigma, I can't think of a stronger example of what stigma is than the example you've just set out there, that when people really, I guess, and I don't know, that the individuals involved, they should have absolutely had every possible sympathy, empathy, everything that they could possibly do. The ignorance around the issue stunted them to the point that they turned it upon you in what seems it's almost like an aggressive way. And I think that summarises the stigma, doesn't it? A complete lack of understanding, a lack of understanding of the situation and the impact of the situation too.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, isn't it? Because suicide did hold such a stigma until it was decriminalised back in the 1960s. I think that is why some people still have those old-fashioned views. And again, the kind of language that we use around suicide, we don't want to talk about committing because of its criminalisation. So I think whilst we campaign to change the language used about it, we can change society's views, and also talking to younger people about these issues, we can change the way that they see suicide, that there is an illness there. It's not potentially a physical illness, but it's something that's made them change their pathway. So I think that's sort of some of the stuff that we aim to achieve, through the charity Papyrus. And I think for myself, accessing really good bereavement support through the NHS, I think I am where I am today because of it, but also because of the Papyrus family, their understanding, and the fact that a lot of the people that are part of Papyrus have been touched by suicide. I think that is, the support that walking beside them every day is ensured where I am, 5 years, a few months down the line, don't think it would have been possible without them.
We've got Sarah sharing her story on Radio City Talk. Can I ask you your thoughts on the shoes display that we've got here today? All different types of shoes representing young people, different sizes and styles and everything in between. What was your reaction when you saw it laid out and the sun came out? I think
the shoes have got an absolutely massive impact, and I think what we're seeing there is those 200 lives that have been lost, in children that really, we want that zero suicide, we want that zero loss of children, really. So to see 200 pairs of shoes laid out, it's an extremely powerful and emotive way of displaying those numbers, that 200 school children. Really, really, really powerful. And when I heard that might be happening, I have to say I did get quite emotional about it, because seeing a pair of shoes is seeing somebody's life. It's the first thing you see when you walk through the door into your house, and our shoes are still there for Ben's, still on the shoe rack waiting for him to return home. So it's a very impactful message.
Thank you for sharing your story. You're now working with Papyrus. The team are here down today, and I know that people want to come down and have the conversations. I can see those conversations taking place as we speak. You can also get all the information via the website, radiocitytalk.co.uk, with links there. All the Papyrus jumpers have got the Hope Line UK branding on there as well. Can you tell us about that?
Hope Line UK is confidential service where you can phone in to Hope Line UK and speak to mental health workers if you're worried about a young person that's at risk of suicide. You can be a teacher, you can be a parent, an adult that just is concerned, or you can ring in if you're a young person that feels suicidal or feels that your life is not safe at the moment. So you can ring Hope Line UK. It's 0800 068 4141.
Brilliant stuff. I was just about to read that off somebody's back. One of the team there, we were just speaking to one of the members of the public who come down to St George's Hall today. If you don't mind, I'll bring Carmel back into the conversation. Carmel, as you were sharing your story before, Sarah was nodding along, and I just wonder whether or not, Sarah, was there something in particular about the story that, or in the shared experience, if you like, that you and Carmel would like to discuss? You can do so. You can do so on the show now. In fact, Carmel, I'm going to give you a microphone, and I'll put you two in charge.
Thanks, Meg.
I think what it is when you meet somebody that is bereaved by suicide, certainly your heart's connecting in that loss, and that person truly understands where you've been, where you've come from, and potentially where you're going. And I think some of the family sides that we've been talking about, we feel like we connect in the way that our other children are sort of been bereaved, and how their process and their pathways are.
That's it. It kind of felt really nice and reassuring that someone else was going through what you're going through, because it's such a lonely experience to go through, because most people have their children, and a suicide loss is different to a physical loss, of a physical disease loss, a suicide loss. We struggle with it immensely in the beginning, early days, and as we were talking, I was just like, oh my God, you were going through that as well. And it's awful to say. It was nice to feel that, but
I think it's like you say, it's awful to say it's nice to meet somebody else that is bereaved by suicide, but it is nice because that connection means that you've been somewhere that you both understand and can empathise with as well, and talk about it without anybody judging how you feel, whether you're following a normal process. Even we talked about things like going out. You know, our lives have to carry on, and our other children, we've got to do things for them and attend things like family weddings, but it still never feels truly happy, does it? You know, you feel
never.
like you should never enjoy yourself ever again.
You never get a 10 out of 10 ever.
No.
And you expect, you know that for the rest of your life that you're never going to get a 10 out of 10 feeling. Even if I won the lottery tomorrow, it would never be 10 out of 10, and I'd probably give most of it away, and then I'd just make sure all my family and every my friends were okay, and you know.
Sadly, it just won't buy back what we want, will it? Because
money's nothing.
No. And grief is such a difficult thing, and you know, everybody says, "Oh, you're so together. How do you cope? How do you manage? How do you get up in the morning?" If it was me, I wouldn't. But I think what you learn to deal with is that grief allows you to put a different face on, dependent on the day of the week or where you're going.
Like this year, it was the first year that we've celebrated New Year for the first time. Because normally we just stay in and we light some lanterns off and we have just a really peaceful time at home while everyone else is like really enjoying themselves. But this year my friend said to me, one of my friends' doctor was having a fancy dress party, and she said, "Do you want to come?" So we went along, and we were sort of on the last minute decision whether to do it or not. So we ran out to the shop and bought some dressing up clothes and went that night as hippies, and it was the first time I've laughed in 4 years on a New Year. And then I realised the next day it was actually because I was in character, and it's the first time
it wasn't actually you.
Because I don't normally drink, and I was drunk. So you think, but that was to be in character is how you cope, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think that's the thing. I think New Year's is a very significant time because it's another year that you're entering into without them, another year that you're leaving behind without them. So time ticks on, and people start to talk about the years that they've been gone. So
you dread the year.
We think that now Ben's been gone longer than he's actually been at school. So he's been, out of our lives for longer than he was at the high school that he attended. And when you start to think about those kind of significant events, they're further away from you than they ever were, even though they're in your heart.
That's right. And Oscar took his life in the January, so we kind of, Christmas is a difficult time, and then you enter the January, a difficult time. And it just brings it home, doesn't it, of the emotions that you have to go through every year without it will never go away.
And we have to celebrate Sam's birthday on the same day of Ben's birthday, with him being a twin. So we wonder how we'll ever celebrate his birthday without that bittersweet loss of Ben. So that's a very difficult thing to do. So every year we have to think of something different that we can do so that we're not actually impacting on his birthday, but we're not sort of, drowning ourselves in the grief of loss as well, and that.
But it is where you have to find a new life, and you have to find it yourself of how to live a new life. It's awful. And you don't wish that on anyone. I was watching something the other night on television, and it was like Les Miserables, and I was seeing all the people, all the homelessness in the street and all these things, and you kind of think these things have gone on forever, but I can't remember children ever before taking their lives at school age. I think this is the first that we've experienced. It didn't happen in my generation, and looking back through the history, I don't think it happened, did it? People from, especially the kids that went to school, if they were wealthy and they went to school, they wouldn't have taken their own lives. It's kind of unheard of. So this is like a new thing that we're having to deal with, and we're responsible now to kind of stamp it out before the tree grows. There's a seed there, and that tree, we need to cut it down.
I think that's what PAPYRUS is trying to do with their schools and university guides, try and equip teachers with the, sort of paperwork that helps them to plan and to, educate their staff about suicide. So, there's that resource is on their webpage as well.
Absolutely. Full link to all those web pages via radiocitytalk.co.uk. Can I just say, I think that was possibly the most unique bit of radio I think I've ever been involved in. Jake Mills alongside me from Chasing the Stigma. That was quite something, wasn't it, Jake?
Yeah. It's hard to know what to say to follow that, really. I just think that's what the show's about. The show is about people and experiences, and I think so many people will get so much from what you've said, and just that conversation there, that's probably more than people have ever heard in that kind of that realm of things. I think there was something that I'd like to bring up though very quickly. Looking at your watch. How long have I got?
Your links always go on a bit, Jake.
No. It's just something what Sarah said about not being an obvious sign, and I think that's a really, really important point to make, because I think sometimes we can waste too much time looking for an obvious sign in ourselves and in others. There might not be a reason or an obvious reason, might be a combination of smaller reasons, and I think it's being aware that there doesn't have to be something obvious, and let's talk about mental health when it's good as well as when it's bad, because that'll make it easier. Let's just make it ingrained in our lives.
If you want to be part of the day, do come down St George's Hall. We're here on the steps with our shoes that are laid out. The hashtag Lost Childhoods. Thank you to everybody who's getting involved in social media as well. We're at Radio City Talk, and if you've been affected by any of the issues that we're talking about on the website, radiocitytalk.co.uk, linked to all the different organisations. Dame Hood's all round, by the way. For that. Thank you so much for your time, Carmel. So thank you for sharing your stories. We're here on the steps of the iconic St George's Hall. Many people coming down taking photos of our shoes exhibition, which represent the lives of young people lost to suicide each and every year. The Mayor of the City of Liverpool, Joe Anderson's just arrived. Joe, thank you for your time. Thanks for coming down.
Yeah, thanks Mick for inviting me to come and have a look at it, and I'm delighted to be here. And I just want to personally start by saying, paying a tribute to this campaign in terms of to raise awareness that you've led, Radio City, the likes of Jake Mills, Chasing the Stigma. It's really, I think, raised the profile of mental health, not just of young people, but everybody that suffers from mental health. But I think the visual here, obviously, listeners won't be able to see, but it is quite moving and poignant. To see all the pairs of shoes that represent young people that have lost their lives through mental health, and if you like, in some senses gives us a real understanding of how many young people have been lost, and I pay tribute to all of the people, YPAS and everybody else that's involved in supporting young people. We've got to keep talking about it. We've got to keep giving people support, and we've got to be there for young people to talk. And at the end of the day, if we do that, then we can help, because one loss is a tragedy. And you're right as well. We've got to talk about not just people who are, bereaved by suicide, and the young people we've lost, but the people that are scarred by mental health for years to come, who've lost years out of their life because they suffered from mental health and trauma and all of those things. We've got to be there. And I think the more we debate this and talk about it, the more we can find solutions and help people.
And of course, people will think of what are the reasons, who's to blame, who can we turn our attention to as well. Already from the programme, we're hearing that there's almost like an issue across the whole of society about how we talk about this, that we're not equipped to talk about this at the moment. And it's not just going to be a decision by a politician or one campaign. This seems to be like everybody's got to buy into it. Everybody's got to play their part.
No, absolutely. I do think it's right that we don't blame each other or whatever, but having said that, I'm going to sound a bit hypocritical. We have lost lots of money in support of mental health and mental health charities. Schools have lost lots of money. Local authorities have lost lots of money. And that's meant that there's not people there at the front line who can identify and support young people. So we've got to address that, Mick. That's a big part of the issues. We've got to make sure that our schools and mental health services, it's absolutely appalling that me as the mayor of this city have had to make a decision to cut support to mental health charities. I shouldn't have to be put in that position, but because we've got massive reductions in our budget, we've got no choice. But that said, it does mean that we still can do a lot more with each other, working across different sectors to support and help each other identify very early on families and children and young people and older people as well, but young people in particular who are struggling and suffering with mental health. We've got to be able to talk openly and not worry about stigma. That's why Jake's charity, Chasing the Stigma, is absolutely crucial. There's nothing wrong with having mental health because of the problems that we face in our lives, in our daily lives, and the pressure. And talking about it openly, being not afraid to actually admit that you've suffered with mental health and you've thought about suicide and those things are ways of engaging people. And for me, that's the most fundamental shift I've seen in years and years of being on this earth, but years and years in politics. is that we've now got to the stage where we're not afraid to talk anymore. We can openly discuss and debate this. And if we do that, I think we can find solutions to help us achieve better collaboration and coordination across the services that we provide.
If we, plays devil's advocate in regard to, the political situation that we find ourselves in at the moment, if we look at those shoes and think, well, these were the shoes of young people lost to suicide, you do start to wonder, well, what are they worth then? If someone's going to make a decision to say, well, we're going to cut that service, then they come and look and speak to the families who are here today, hear the stories of those families and say, well, it wasn't worth invested in that service. These are our children. These are our most precious resource in all the world that we do anything to sacrifice, and yet we're asking them to make the sacrifice.
And a lot of it, as you rightly say, goes unnoticed, doesn't it? People often will complain about the cuts to, physical stuff, whether it's the roads and the potholes or the libraries. And unnoticed goes the support that we often have given to the voluntary sector or to community groups or to our schools or to services such as CAMHS in Liverpool. And the consequences of that are, the reality and the fact is that we don't connect or contact children in the way that we possibly used to do or should do, and that's a consequence of the cut. So I'm optimistic that the government and politicians are now waking up to the fact that if we invest in this type of service and we keep these type of services supported and going, then the consequence of that is that you save money further on down the line. So I hope that will be reflected. We've seen government talk about they want to support mental health service in the same way they do physical health service. We have yet to see the funding come through for that, but I think it will happen, and I'm positive and hopeful that will happen, because, as I said, we've now got to a stage where I've never ever seen before, where we now have an open dialogue and discussion about mental health. And that's, as I said, all credit to the likes of yourself, to Jake and other people for raising the profile of what is a failure on society's behalf, not to support young people and not to support anybody that needs our help and support.
Mayor of the City of Liverpool, Joanne, thank you for your time. Jake, we talk about cash, when we talk about, the organisations that we mentioned, we're going to be meeting some in the next few minutes as well. If there was just, it costs this amount of money to save these lives, it would be an easier thing to do, but it's more complicated than that, isn't it? But government decisions, political decisions will play an absolutely key part in all this, won't they?
Yeah, they're absolutely pivotal to all the decisions, and I think it is tragic almost that it comes down to money, but I think it does, and I think now if we can kind of, if that's the point we have to make, if that's the argument we have to make to government, that the financial cost of this and the implications of it, and that they will save money, then so be it, let's do it, because we can't afford to be hanging around now. So we've got to talk to whoever it might be in a way that they want to talk to get results right now.
Absolutely, and if you heard, Carmel's story in the first hour of our episode 100 special, you telling me that a politician would dare stand before an electorate and say, yeah, it wasn't worth spending the money. It wasn't worth spending the money on investing in something which may have protected your child. No one would ever do that, would they?
I think even if you asked the question direct, you would not get the answer. But let's ask it. Let's get as many people to ask it as possible.
Kath Thompson joins on the programme now. Kath, thank you for your time.
It's okay, thank you.
CAMHS, Child and Adolescent Mental Health Service.
Yes.
Tell us about the work that you do, because this is a really important role that you play within this whole field.
Yeah, well, I'm from Merseyside Youth Association, and we form part of the CAMHS partnership as a voluntary organisation. So our particular role in the CAMHS partnership is all around raising awareness, training, promoting mental health across the city for children, young people, parents, carers and workers.
In terms of that as well, raising that awareness, talking about it, such a key issue as well. Sometimes you hear people go, oh, CAMHS, oh, we're waiting on CAMHS.
Yeah,
That's because it's almost like there's like a machinery and system that kicks in if you get a report.
Yes. And I think with the partnership, it's much more about taking CAMHS out to the community, to the classrooms, to, we work very closely with YPAS, who've got hubs now in the communities. So it's about making sure that support's there wherever those children need it and at the right stage and as early as possible.
And so many times when we talk about mental health, there's always this still, and we talk about stigma, that association with the men in white coats that you're going to be bundled away. And actually, You guys are a great example through Merseyside Youth Association, the CAMHS team, right across Liverpool, and various different CAMHS organisations. That's not what it's like.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say you're normal people, but you're normal people, right?
I suppose so, ish. Yeah, I think when I first started this role about 4 years ago, one of the things that we did was we went into schools and we had some pictures. We still use them now in training. We've just developed a training called RAW, which has been put across all the primary schools. And that starts off with these 8 pictures, and the delegates are asked to choose the one that for them most represents mental health. And it was really interesting when we did that at the start 4 years ago with school children, and something like 45% of them chose a padded cell, which shocked us because we were like, well, that's not how mental health is seen nowadays, and yet the children are still picking up those images.
Where are they getting that from? Is it a cartoon thing? Is it a Batman thing? Is it a...
I don't know. The only thing we can come down to is films and the media, and maybe negative things that they're hearing from family members, older family members. But the good thing is that is changing. We are seeing a difference because we continually use these images throughout training, and we are seeing that it's changing.
And what does it look like? What sort of reaction do you get now?
Well, one of the things that we always talk about is we've all got mental health. And with the CAMHS partnership, we talk about mental health being everybody's business because we all have it. And so when we go out and speak to kids in school, one of the first things we say is we all have mental health. With the primary schools at the moment, we're trying to encourage children to talk to us about how they feel from 1 to 10. And that is just such a simple thing, but it's a language that's starting to be used across the schools. So that, because if we ask someone how they are, they tend to say, I'm fine. And then we don't know what that really means. So by telling us how you feel from 1 to 10, we get a good idea of where that person's mental health is for that day, for that moment.
I sometimes wonder if we just banned the phrase "I'm fine," just
all
together.
There,
like nobody would, because it's that thing of like you've had a terrible night's sleep and your kids have been up and your kids are like, "Oh, how was your weekend?" Yeah, fine.
Yeah.
How are you feeling?
It, does it?
Oh, I'm fine. You just come back from a funeral. How was it? Oh, it was fine.
Yeah.
And it's that thing where you almost, it's just like a response, which is it's a barrier to almost protect you as well. Whereas actually going, you know what, I've had a 3-day today.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
People then go, oh right, well maybe I can do something that might bump me up to a 5 or a 6.
Yeah, and I think when with as we're here looking at the topic of suicide in young people, I think that's so important because often it's that moment when you're at that low point and then something happens that you can't handle in that moment, you know. We talk about things building up and, you know, the phrase about the straw that broke the camel's back, and sometimes it's being aware of where that young person's at. And if they're continually in that place where they're feeling low, you know, we talk about feeling 1s, 2s, 3s consistently, then we know we need to be there keeping a real eye on that young person and trying to help them, you know, to find something positive to lift their mood.
Can I ask you about that? Because there might be sort of an understanding that people think, well, if things start going badly or going wrong, then there's a pathway which might be about depression, which might lead to suicide. But I guess young people aren't on pathways. Suicide might never be anything that they consider, not something that people need to worry about. But at the same time, those other issues that may affect them may also have a long-lasting impact on their life chances, the way they see the world, their options in life as well. And I guess we've got to be mindful of that.
Yeah, absolutely. We're actually currently in rehearsals in the Epstein Theatre for a festival that's taking place this week. And it's exactly around that. It's about adverse childhood experiences and the things that impact on mental health for children and young people. And they will be presenting their stories on stage from Wednesday to Friday this week. And every year we see the most powerful stories, and it also opens your eyes to think sometimes it's the little things. It's the fact that the PE kit wasn't washed and they went to school with a dirty PE kit. It's things that we don't even think about that can really, really have a negative impact on how a child feels and their sense of well-being.
I picked up online actually, and there's loads of these links on the website. I mentioned it a few times at radiocitytalk.co.uk. It was rated looking at risk factors.
Yes.
Can I run some of them by you and then just get sort of your reaction? Because I think people will hear it and they'll go, all right, well, actually, that might tick a couple of boxes with my own son, daughter, whoever it might be. Long-term illness. Of them or also a loved one. Family links, maybe a family member who's had mental health issues in the past. The death of someone close. Divorcing or separating parents, which is such a common thing as well. Historic physical or sexual abuse, or ongoing in fact. Living in poverty. as well, experiencing discrimination, someone who's likely to face discrimination because of disability or race, whether they're asked to be carers as well, and also whether or not they have long-term educational difficulties. Now, this isn't a tick box exercise, but there'll be plenty of people who think, well, actually, that might be an issue within something that I know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, what we've got to realise with those factors as well is that some young people have got several of those all at once going on. One of the things with the training course that we are about to put out to the city is called Serious. And one of the things that we're asking people to be aware of is if these risk factors are present, we need to really be mindful about that young person and be ready to ask them whether they are feeling suicidal.
Do you think sometimes as adults we kind of go, oh, kids have kind of got it easy, you know, that they're not paying a mortgage, and you know, adult life can be difficult as well. But I almost get a sense there's not a real understanding now, particularly with social media. It's not something we've mentioned yet, and the digital world that they live in as well. That's something very different, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the quotes that stands out to me from a review that happened a couple of years ago of the schools was a Senko who said in all her 12 years of being a Senko in school, she's never known there to be so many unhappy children.
That's a special educational needs coordinator.
Yeah, but that was for a mainstream school, and she's just saying, you know, the number of children that she sees that are unhappy, she's never seen so many. So for me, you know, all of those things you mentioned before, you could add to that bullying. You know, we know a lot of children experience bullying at school. The pressures all the time to fit in, to have the right clothes, you know, the list goes on. And I think with the social media side of it, they can't get away from it as well. You can't go home and get away from that. So it's so important that I think as parents, as workers who work with young people, we're just aware. And I think I can see down there one of the parents that's actually helped us with the Serious course, and also a parent who lost a young person to suicide. And I think the message loud and clear from those parents was it needs to be on everybody's radar, because it's the biggest killer of young people in the UK, and it needs to be on everybody's radar. You know, no one tells you your child could end their life through suicide. Nobody says that. They tell you to make sure they eat healthy and get good sleep and do exercise, but nobody tells you as a parent, look after your child, because did you know that suicide kills more young people in the UK than anything else? And no one says that. So, you know, that's why we've written the Serious course and what we're hoping to get out of it when we do the training.
When you think as well about the amount of time that we spend with our children teaching them how to cross the road.
Yeah.
And when we teach them about being safe on a bike, when we teach them how to swim, we put such an emphasis on that. And then you look at it and you go, well, actually the biggest threat to your child in terms of loss is themselves. Yeah. Which is it's terribly sad, isn't it? And I almost think that that's part of the difficulty, that people think, I almost don't want to think about that. That's such an awful thing. But it's true, it's fact. There's 200 pairs of shoes there that prove it.
Exactly.
You mentioned the stage performance, the Epstein Theatre as well. When did you say that was on again?
It's this week, so from Wednesday through to Friday night. Every night there'll be groups performing from schools, from youth groups. There are still a few tickets if people want to come down.
Excellent stuff. Yep. Well, we should add that to our list of links that we've got on the radiocitytalk.co.uk website. In regards to that as well, sometimes people might think, we're going to spend all our time just talking about our feelings all the time. I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong with that. But actually, that's a good example of organisations like yourselves getting kids involved in things which are, you know, it's not a distraction technique from maybe some of the difficulties, but it's another activity. It's something that they can be proud of, something that they can get involved in, investing in themselves.
Yeah, well, you mentioned earlier risk factors, and one of the things that we say is the counterbalance to risk factors is resilience. And we know that the things that build resilience are normal everyday things, you know, feeling like you belong, feeling like you're part of a group, having good exercise, having a decent diet, getting enough sleep, feeling like you've got a sense of worth, you know, that you're achieving something. All of these things lead to resilience. And people, and these are the stories we're going to see at the Epstein, because yes, people have got these risk factors that you've mentioned, but it doesn't mean that everything's going to go downhill and they're going to have a negative outcome, because time and time again we see young people who, despite all of these odds, have come out and you know, done amazing things with their lives and achieved at school. So we're trying to learn from those young people, and again, that's what we're going to see in these plays this week.
Excellent stuff. The Epstein Theatre. Thank you so much for your time today, Kath. Thanks for joining us on the
Thank you.
programme. Really appreciate you joining us. Very pleased to say we've got Jed and Sue with us from YPAS, the Young Persons Advisory Service. Now, you're both practitioners. Thank you both for your time. Jed, thank you for coming along as well. What does a practitioner do?
A practitioner, I'm a therapist, a counsellor. So my job is to hear people's stories, find out what's going on for them, and just process that a bit with them and hopefully help them to feel a bit better and to have better relationships and better mental health.
You're on the front line in terms of some of the conversations that we're having today. We're doing our best here on the station to try and get people talking about this. The shoes, what do you make of the shoes? What does that represent to you?
I think for me there's two things. I think for me as a parent, walking up and seeing those shoes, I literally had tears in my eyes, because for all of us, we literally put ourselves in those shoes, don't we, and think, if that was my child. I think for me as a mental health therapist, there's another feeling that goes on about every single one of those deaths was preventable if we had the resources to be able to deal with mental health problems before it gets to that point. So I suppose as a therapist, I feel frustrated and I suppose a bit angry that it got to that point that those kids didn't get the help they needed.
This next question, I'm just going to ask you and see how you respond. Children who have got difficulties, can those difficulties be fixed? Can the problems that young people face be dealt with if they meet the right people and they have the right conversation?
I think mental health is an ongoing thing, isn't it? So we all have mental health and we all have it for the whole of our lives. Obviously, if it starts when you're young, it's going to be more difficult to deal with. But absolutely, everyone, you might struggle with it. There's mental health and mental illness. So if your mental health, you can have a mental illness and still have good mental health. You can not have a mental illness and have bad mental health. We all need to look after our mental health. If we get to kids early enough, though, it is preventable and something can be done.
In terms of the work that you're doing, is it not rocket science? What's the right brain surgery? No, therapy. People think about therapy. They think about people sitting in a room and talking. Is it as simple as that?
There is elements of that, I think, isn't it? It's not. I think when people talk about, we've all done a lot of years of training and we're all still doing training. I'm always looking for new tools that I can use to help a young person. But I think at the heart of it is the relationship that you have with the young person. And for a lot of young people, the fact that you're sitting there for an hour totally focused on them, their feelings, their experiences, their stories, that is the start of helping their mental health to get better.
I think the reason I ask that, Steve, is that maybe there's a sense that, people think, oh, well, what's it going to be like? What's that going to be? What's that conversation going to be like? Is it going to be awkward? Is it going to be in a weird place? But actually the fact that, well, at the end of the day, it's you and a person sitting down in a room and are talking. People think, well, yeah, I can do that. I can cope with that.
I think it's really important to recognise that the young person wants to be there. They're not there because they've been forced to, because the likelihood is it's harder to engage in the process. So the fact is to check out that the young person wants to be there and recognising within that first session that they will be anxious, and that's natural, and to normalise that. It can be a scary process, that sort of worry of, if I open up and tell you quite sensitive information, what is that going to do to me? Am I going to end up crying floods of tears and never be able to turn those tears off? And so there's a whole process. So that's why it's really important within that first session to offer them that real sort of supportive space, reassuring space, so then they can start to build that trust, develop that deep relationship, and then hopefully reach a point where they do feel they can share quite sensitive information. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, do you ever get a sense from them that they think that the thing that they're about to say is a bit silly or it's not relevant? The range of things you must hear must be so far and wide. You must have heard 1,000,001 different things that a young person might go in and think, oh, maybe I'll say the wrong thing, or maybe they'll think I'm being a bit daft.
Not as much from the young people. I work with families as well, and I think sometimes parents can come with that initial sort of what I'm going to say might sound silly or stupid, or there's more important things. Young people actually are quite good at gauging. I think once they get relaxed into the relationship and into the process, whether it be talking, doing it through artistic, drama, whatever means fits for them, because we're very flexible in our approaches to offer them choice on how to express what's going on. I think they recognise, for them, the biggest feedback we get is, you're the first person that's listened to us or listened to me, and you've took me seriously. And that just feels so important to them. That's the biggest feedback we get, is the fact that they do feel listened to and they do feel as though they've been valued.
Does part of your heart sink when they say that, though? Do you think, well, you're trained, you know what you're doing, but actually at any point that a teacher, a friend, a family friend, an uncle, an auntie, a grandma, a gran, whoever it would be, to no fault of their own, but they weren't equipped to have that conversation?
I don't necessarily know if people aren't equipped. I think times are different maybe, and there's a lot more pressure on the adults, whether it be parents, carers, education staff, etc., to find the space to be able to offer it. We hear some great stories about educational staff, parents, carers who have the ability to just sit and offer that space. It's almost described as a supportive network, a positive supportive network that can just involve one person. That can be good enough. It's just unfortunate that in this day and age people are so fast paced, and having that time and space is quite challenging. People feel very tired, and it's almost like, oh, the last thing I want to do, and so on and so forth. That seems to be quite a stereotypical common theme that I come across. But everybody's equipped. Everyone's got the equipment to just sit and listen to a young person. Everyone's got that.
People do, I think. I mean, one of the first things we do in our first session with the young people is identify the people that they've got around them. Because even if it's the cat that sits on the bed with them when they're feeling a bit low, or the dog that makes them go out for a walk so they get, they do something, they're all things that help with their mental health. So sometimes they don't recognise that, and we'll help them to identify that as well.
And when a young person has gone through a series of sessions with you guys, what happens at the end? I think, again, because we're a bit ignorant about this, there's a sense, they go skipping out the door, falder, fix now, all sorted. But I guess that last session is the start of just the next part of their journey.
I think part of it is reassuring them that if you're struggling again, I know recently a young person that I've seen, he really thought that he couldn't see me ever again. So reassuring them that we're here. You're up to the age of 25. If you're struggling at any time, because I don't know whether he's going to struggle again or not, but just knowing that he can come back in again is really reassuring. I mean, part of the process of the therapy is to reassure them that they're resilient and they're strong and they've done things for themselves. They don't always recognise that, and part of what we're doing is to help them recognise their own strengths and resilience. So hopefully you've sort of fortified them a bit to go out there and keep going.
What does it take to be able to sit down in a room with someone like yourself? Part of the CAMHS network, the YPAS, though, do wonderful work right across the city at various different hubs.
There's many ways to gain certain services within Liverpool, and there are a lot of small charitable services as well as public services. Particularly with ourselves, it's just self-referral. You can go online and refer, phone up and refer, go and see an adult, and an adult can do it on your behalf if it feels too much. So there's various ways to be referred into our service. Similar to CAMHS, although GP, go to GP, is another ideal way, and just there's a website called the Liverpool Early Help Directory, and you can put information in there and they can highlight different services available within Liverpool as well, and different people. On the whole, we are working towards a more self-referral system in respect of a lot of the organisations.
Well, YPAS is open referral, so any young person can walk through the door and make a referral into our service at any time.
Wonderful. Thank you both for your time. Thank you for coming. I know you've both got to sort of jet off. Thank you both for coming down. Jake King, Sue Horrocks from the Young Persons Advisory Service. Really appreciate you joining us on the programme. Throughout the programme today, Jake Mills from the charity Chasing the Stigma with us on the programme. Just as we speak, Jake, there's a little girl just come down with her family now, and the family just looking at the shoes. I'm just having a moment there.
Yeah.
The Young Persons Advisory Service do wonderful work there. There is that thing, isn't there? And I kind of hinted at it there. It's just talking. If we could just talk, if we could learn to talk, if we knew how to talk, if we were able to find a ways of other people to talk, I kind of get the sense we could solve so many problems in life. But these guys are experts in the field. They absolutely know what they're doing. And also, from what they're saying there, they're accessible. You can sit in a room with them and get that help.
I think what they're brilliant at doing at YPAS as well is creating an environment that works for the young people. It makes them half the battle, if not even more than half the battle, is actually creating that environment and allowing people to be engaged and want to open up and want to talk, and that's what they're absolutely brilliant at doing. But then, you know, they've been a victim of the financial cuts that we're talking about, and despite the importance of their work, they then were cut by like 48% or something similar. So, you know, it's about actually having that backup from those who are financially in charge. But this is actually quite, we're a little bit distracted here, aren't we, by this moment here.
You know that pitch that came onto the cat that came onto the pitch at Goodison Park? We've got our own version of this. We've got a little girl's come down. I think she's going through the shoes. I think she's going to go and pick out her favourite type of shoes. There's like a pair of like Converse there, one that she's going for. It's an art display, but it's a member. You know, it's a piece of public art. We've created it. I think she's picked her favourite pair. Bless her.
But in a way, this has actually brought it to life even more so, hasn't it? And the reality of it. So, yeah, no, it's quite a moving moment.
Mental Health Monday with Mick Coyle.
Radio City Talk.